So a little bit of housekeeping. So ideally we would have cameras on and mics off unless you are speaking, asking a question, sharing your experience. But I also have noted that we've had a couple of bandwidth issues. So I'm also happy for cameras to be off. As I've mentioned a moment ago, this session will also be recorded as well. And I mentioned as we were waiting, please feel free to invite any friends that you may have who may be interested in applying to Oxford or Cambridge. And please participate, you guys. So for Reconnect JA, this is actually our first virtual event, which is very exciting, but also a little bit nerve-wracking for us. You know, we're speaking to a screen rather than speaking to people. So being able to have your participation, hear your thoughts, have your questions, it just makes the experience so much better for us, but I'm sure it'll make it better for you as well. And then it goes without saying, but it has to be said, professional behavior. So just make sure that whatever behavior you are showcasing, whatever you are saying, making sure that it's appropriate, avoiding discriminating language or behavior. Okay, next slide, please. So introductions. So, first of all, we have the Reconnect JA team. So I have all of us on the screen. I've already introduced myself briefly, but for those who weren't in the meeting yet, so my name is Rakani Phillipson. I am the founder, CEO, and managing director of Reconnect JA, but I just refer to myself mostly as the initiative lead. And then we have the rest of the team. So I'll introduce Jaheem on his behalf because he's not able to attend this evening. So he is the director of partnerships and sponsorships. So he's someone that just makes sure that whenever we're doing events or whenever we're trying to do collaborations, we're doing those and we're finding the best collaborators and making sure that we're really just getting involved with the community and existing businesses and organizations just to be even more impactful than we can be on our own. Jaheem is also doing, I believe, education, and he's doing that at Emma College, I believe. I feel like I'm introducing team. Give me a little. He's at Emma College. If not, shake your heads. If you don't know, let me know, and that's okay too. But either way, one thing that we realized and one thing that you'll notice is what when Charlotte and Tasman introduce themselves is basically everyone on the team is either alumni or current students of Cambridge, which is one of the reasons why I decided to do this. So he is another current Cambridge student. And I'll pass the baton over to Tasman to introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. My name's Tasnim. I am the monitoring, evaluation and research lead at Reconnect Jamaica. So a lot of my work is in researching, undergoing market research and just understanding how we can best support all of our members and just create services that really appeal to the Jamaican public. So I studied human, social and political sciences at the University of Cambridge, and I went to St. John's College. So I graduated last year, June. So I've been working since September. And yeah, I'm also a One ambassador. So I working with an international development charity, campaigning to eradicate poverty across the globe. And I'm also starting a new role soon in climate change. So I'll be a climate change intern. So a lot of my work is in international development. And yeah, I'm happy to be a part of this team and happy to answer any questions that you guys may have.
Great. And Sade, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Yep. Hi, everyone. My name is Sade Christian. I'm the treasurer of Reconnect JA. I'm also a current student at Emmanuel College, affectionately known as Emma. I'm studying economics and I'm in my third year, so I'll be graduating this year in the start of July. I'll be doing a lot of the background work today. I'm controlling the slides. You might see my name pop up in the chat with some links or just extra comments. But yeah, I'm hoping this session will be really insightful. We have lots of information about admissions, about scholarships, financial support. So please ask questions. This is a great session to find out as much information as you can.
Great. Okay, and if you can go over to the next slide. So you've had Reconnect JA or Reconnect Jamaica a couple of times now, but what is Reconnect JA? So we are a youth-led nonprofit and we're registered in the UK and in Jamaica. And we have on our screen the 4 pillars that we try and abide by. So in essence, we're trying to be an organisation for Jamaican youth, local and global. So supporting Jamaican youth in the UK and in Jamaica with all of their needs kind of holistically, and also trying to create a community that's transatlantic, a community where we can understand each other and we actually have better understandings of each other and connections to each other, which is also a part of the reason why throughout the series of Access to Excellence events, we've tried to put them at times that are both accessible for Jamaican nationals and UK nationals, and we've tried to do it in a way which also encourages kind of conversations and dialogue between nationals of both countries. So in terms of our 4 pillars, so we have education. So when we think of education, whether it's kind of back to school initiatives in Jamaica or whether it's having events like these where we're trying to empower Jamaican youth locally and globally to be able to apply to, you know, world leading institutions like Oxford and Cambridge, or just explore educations in ways where they might otherwise feel like they don't feel empowered to do so. It's something where we're just trying to make sure that everyone feels empowered to pursue education and also cultural education as well. So really understanding Jamaican history and Jamaican culture beyond things like food and music. Information as well is another thing that's really important to us. So finding the right information can sometimes be really overwhelming, especially when you're trying to find information in regards to a different country that might use a different system. So we're trying to be a central point to support local and global youth to be able to find information in aspects that relate to them, whether that is citizenship and passports, or whether that's trying to get in contact with organizations in the UK as a Jamaican national. We try and support kind of all of that. And then travel as well. So trying to support UK youth specifically of Jamaican descent to be able to travel to Jamaica beyond being a tourist. So not having to stay in all-inclusive resorts, giving them other options, environmentally friendly options, and also options where they can kind of mix travel and volunteering as well. So volunteer tourism and then volunteering as well. So we've been working really hard to try and create opportunities and create support for UK nationals of Jamaican descent to be able to go to Jamaica and volunteer or take part in internships. And that's something that we'll continue to work towards. And if that's something you're interested in, please make sure to get in contact with us and we can see how we can support that as well. And so we have our representatives here. So Tasneem has already represented herself and introduced herself, but Jafaz, if you would like to introduce yourself as well.
Yeah. Hi everybody. So I'm Jafaz. As I mentioned before, I'm a current student at Queen's College, Cambridge. So I'm studying history and politics, and I come from Jamaica. Went to school in Jamaica, so I can offer perspectives on the process of applying from Jamaica, about the technicalities of it, as well as just the general things that you need to know about it. And yeah, I'm really excited about being here to talk with you guys.
Awesome. Okay. So, I think the goals are pretty self-explanatory, but we just want you to leave this evening with a very clear understanding of what you need to do to apply to Oxford and Cambridge, so Oxbridge. Also the realities of studying and applying to Oxbridge. So that's why we have both Jafaz and Tasnim here to be able to share their lived experiences, both from the UK and Jamaican's perspective, and then also providing you with information and support about applying and what things can look like whilst you are at Oxford and Cambridge, and then also creating an opportunity for you to be able to network internationally. So I'm really happy to know that in the audience and in this event, this virtual event, we have people who are currently in Jamaica, and we also have people who are in the UK as well. And that's something that I'm really proud about, to be able to encourage that sort of conversation as well and improve understandings. So moving on to the essentials. So we are officially starting. So this is the time to get your pens out, your notepads, make your notes, and any questions that you have, please feel free to put them in the chat, because Sade is monitoring the chat, and then there'll be like an allocated time at the end of each section for you to be able to ask your questions to both Jafaz and Tasnim, and then we'll be able to. Okay, and then we'll be able to kind of go from there. So I'm gonna hand it over to Jafaz for this slide.
All right. So in regards to the application timeline, the first thing you need to use is UCAS. If you're not familiar with it, it's like a portal that you can use to apply to any UK university. And registration opens on the 13th of May. So that would be if you're applying for next academic year. And once you do your registration, you can apply to 5 universities. But if you're applying to Oxbridge, you have to pick between either Cambridge or Oxford. Yeah, it's a really tough decision, isn't it? But I would recommend going with Cambridge. And then after you submit the application through UCAS, you will submit a component which is your personal statement, and then you put in your grades and some other relevant personal information to them, and then you'll hear back from the universities, and in this process they will be giving you information about things like admissions tests and interviews, and which will be done. So your application is to be submitted by the 15th of October for Cambridge. And Oxford, if any other UK university is a lot later on. I think it's January 15th or something like that. So I don't really remember that one in specific, but Cambridge and Oxford is 15th of October. And then once you hear back from them, they will let you know if you've been invited to do an interview as well as the admissions test. And for some courses, not all, they will also ask for submission of your written work to just have a profile of the things you've done. So it's the most intense period of time would be the kind of October to December part, where there's going to be the application being submitted. Then after you submit the application, you wait a little bit to hear from them. And then once you hear from them, they'll be giving you information about interviews and admissions tests. And by the end of the year, in December, you will do your interviews. For some courses, it's 1. For some, it's 2. And around the same time, you do the admissions test. And then the big day is in January, 13th of January for Oxford and 30th for Cambridge. And on either of these days, you'll hear back whether you've been given an offer or not.
Okay, so we have just on this screen, we just wanted to make those application deadlines super clear to you. So please feel free to like even take a picture of the slide if you would need to, if you would like to even. I also just wanted to highlight that the funding deadlines, if you're someone who knows that you will be reliant on like funding, especially internal funding, and actually external funding, please just be aware that funding deadlines are often significantly earlier than the actual application deadline. So it's something where if you know that funding is something that you're going to need, you have to be very organized with the fact that you've thoroughly looked for the different kind of things that are applicable to you in terms of internal and external funding. You know when those deadlines are, you know how they relate to the actual application deadlines, and in that way you haven't accidentally missed the opportunity in terms of funding, and we will touch on that a little bit later on in the session. And I also just wanted to touch on some post-offer deadlines and post-offer kind of timelines, and those are things that are more specific to people in Jamaica, so international students. So as you'll be aware, like as Jafaz has mentioned, whether you're a UK national, Jamaican national, the actual application process is pretty much identical. But the only main differences are that or what happens post offer. So in terms of thinking about things like visas, so when it comes to visas, you'll actually only be able to submit your visa application once you have an unconditional offer. So the way that UCAS works is that first of all, you'll get a conditional offer. Those conditional offers are based on you being able to evidence that you can afford all of the fees associated with going to university at either Oxford or Cambridge, and also meeting the entry requirements in terms of grades. So once you have met those two requirements, your offer will change on UCAS from conditional to unconditional, and that's where you can submit the actual all of the info that you have gathered in terms of visa applications and submit that. So in terms of best practice, it would be good to kind of accumulate all of the supporting things that you need, so by the time you get that your results basically, which I believe is in the summer, by the time that happens, you have your appointment and you go, sort of thing. And as I just briefly mentioned, so one of those requirements is actually being able to evidence your financial ability. So what that looks like is basically what you'll be given on your offer letter is you'll be told kind of the amount, I believe, that you have to, the amount that basically is needed to be able to study at either Oxford or Cambridge. That will often include kind of basics like accommodation as well as the course fees, and you'll be able to evidence that you can afford that. So whether it's you found whether there's an internal scholarship that you've been successful in, whether there's external scholarships that you've found and you've been successful or unsuccessful with, whether you have savings or you're going to take a summer job or you've got like an angel sponsor, whatever your way of funding the course will be, you need to kind of submit that to them so they know for certain that you'll be able to afford it. And then that will be another thing that also allows you to change your kind of offer from conditional to unconditional as well as the grades, and we'll go from there as well. So next slide, please. So when it comes to things to consider when you're applying, so we have on the screen pretty much everything, but the main things is obviously your grades. So Oxford and Cambridge, they are known to be very academically rigorous. They're known to be difficult to get into. So realistically, you need to know that, okay, A-level wise, you've got 3 A's to A star, A star, A, so pretty much top grades or equivalents of that. If you're not doing A levels, there's also additional things that you sometimes need to do in addition to that. So some courses may require like an admissions test or written work. If you're doing something that's more like artistic, it might be like a portfolio, those sorts of things. But also you beyond academics as well. So it is something where when you think of the colleges and the college system, which is something we're going to go into in a little bit more detail kind of throughout, but it is something where actually you, when you're applying, and especially because on UCAS you will highlight what college you have a preference to, or you'll do an open application, you have to think of other things. So do you have extracurriculars like sporting extracurriculars, or do you have a business or something like that, where actually the choice of college that you go to could potentially offer additional support? Or is it something where actually you have a lot of interest in traveling, so you want to make sure to go to a college that has scholarships and support that allows you to basically travel? Finances, as we've already kind of gone through, but that's something that you really need to consider as well. So some colleges are more expensive than others as well, simply because some are kind of older and have a bit more prestige kind of attached to them, and others are kind of newer and maybe a little, the location isn't as The location isn't as central, so that can also affect the price as well. And the college system as well, which we're going to go into now.
Can I just add something quickly?
Absolutely, yeah.
So when it comes to your grades, Oxford and Cambridge are typically extremely strict. You have to have the minimum requirement when it comes to predicted grades. So in order for you to even be considered for a place, you have to have AAA for Oxford or A star AA for Cambridge. But when it comes to the actual results, in some cases, if you have had any extenuating circumstances, some colleges do take this into account, and they will look at, you have to fill out a form, and they'll ask for more details, but you can get an adjustment placed. But this is very, 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 very rare. So in most cases, you do need to get that A star AA, but there is an adjustment program where you can still claim your place if you miss your grades by a marginal difference.
Thank you so much for that. It's nice to know that there's a bit of that buffer. And Kamani, I can see that your hand is raised. I think we've got 2 or 3 slides, and then it's kind of this section's Q&A. So please, like, make a note of your question, and we'll come to you as well. If we could have the next slide, please, Sade. So we've mentioned a couple times about the college system. But what does that actually kind of mean in terms of your applications? So some things that you have to consider are subject specific considerations. So like was mentioned on the previous slide, for Cambridge specifically, there are about 30 different colleges to choose from, each with a specific history and identity and things like that associated with them. But when it comes to your actual subject, there are some colleges where actually you might not be able to go to that college if you're doing certain courses, because there are things called supervisions that happen, and those supervisions are kind of, they're directly related to your course, but they are hosted by your college, if that makes sense. So you'll want to also think about the facilities as well. So also every college has a library, so you have 2 libraries to access, your college library as well as the more central library. And your college library also might have better resources dependent on what subject you're taking as well. You also want to think about location. So some colleges are very central to where you'll have your lectures, to nightlife, to shops, and some colleges are a bit further out. So if you're someone who doesn't particularly like the hustle and bustle of a city, you might want to be at a college that is slightly further away and have a bit of separation between kind of academic life and home life at college. If you're somebody who actually just want everything to be really close, then you might want to look into colleges that are a bit more central as well. And some colleges will have like more green space. So for example, off the top of my head, there's one college, Girton, which in Cambridge is the college that is the furthest away from pretty much anywhere. And they have like an apple orchard, which is very random, but that college has a lot of green space, which is reflective of the fact that it's completely separate from the city centre. But there's other colleges like King's, St John's, more very central and also more historical colleges, where actually because they have such a strong reputation, it's not just that it's very central, but also there's other things to consider, like tourism, like in the summer and things like that, and how that might affect your kind of life at college. Obviously the costs associated with colleges. So as I mentioned previously, the costs can very much fluctuate. So different colleges have different facilities, different catering options, and those costs very much change. So if it's something where you do get a scholarship and you have kind of a bit more financial resources, then actually that kind of side of choosing a college might not apply to you. But if it's something where you know that finance will be something to consider, then it's something to bear in mind. Community life, so societies, formal halls, student demographics. So I want to just touch on that briefly, especially because everyone in the audience is of Caribbean descent. It is something where when it comes to the colleges, it can fluctuate quite a lot in terms of the diversity, in terms of ethnicity and race. So it is something to bear in mind if you feel like that's something that might impact your student experience and your studies, and you want to feel like actually I'm in like a student body where it's a bigger college and it's a bit more diverse, so maybe there won't be as many barriers to like making friends or finding my community sort of thing. That's another thing to consider as well. And then also financial support. So some colleges are richer than others, for lack of better words. And what that reflects, how that reflects in terms of your experiences, is that there'll be some colleges that are able to offer all sorts of different support, whether you want to volunteer in a different country, or you want to travel, or you want to go to a conference in a different country, or you need financial support to conduct your research for your dissertation. The college supports of all of those things, but it is very much dependent on the financial capabilities of the college. And also on top of that, some colleges also offer kind of job opportunities as well. So library assistants, bar staff, Mabel staff as well, which it can be especially important and a lifeline, because you're also not allowed to have a job whilst you study at Oxford and Cambridge, which is something that a lot of people don't believe, but you can't work, unfortunately. So having like an actual like in-house job through the college can really make sure to kind of up the money throughout the year. And for some people, they just do an open application, they don't consider these things, and they're happy to go wherever as well. So that's another option that you can take.
All right, guys. So now we're going to talk about things to showcase in your application. So the first thing is academic ability. We just touched on that. Regardless of if you're applying from Jamaica or if you're applying from England, the requirements are the same. If you're applying from Jamaica, the only difference is that you'll be applying with CAPE grades instead of A-level grades, but there's a conversion and the requirement is the same thing. So the academic ability is just a baseline requirement. As we mentioned, Oxford and Cambridge just have it's a baseline requirement, and that's the first thing you need before you should even consider applying. You have to make sure that you can check that box there. And non-academic achievements, it's an interesting one because there's no real easy formula to talk about this one, but it's just important advice I would give here is just to talk about what you're really interested in and work that way into your application to show to the university that you really are excited and passionate about what you do and how you relate what you do in your life to it. And your future goals is also important because it shows a bit of direction to what you want to do. It doesn't have to be anything too specific, but just broadly where you see yourself and what you see yourself wanting to do to show what your kind of aspirations are. It helps the people reading your application to get more of a sense of who you are. Because the thing about when you apply to Cambridge and Oxford is they're not looking for somebody who knows everything. They're looking for somebody who's teachable. That's the thing. They're looking for somebody who will work well within the environment and who will be an engaging person to teach and a person who is excited about learning more. They're not expecting you in this application to just say, "Oh, I know these things already." It's about saying that I want to learn more and I'm in a position where I can learn more. And that's why passion and dedication is perhaps the most important part of the application. If you really are passionate about it, it will show in your application. Your application just has to be a reflection of yourself. That's the most important thing. Even when you come to do your interviews here, it just has to be, just be yourself. There's no need to think about formulas or anything. Just be yourself. And if you really are passionate about what you do, they will be really excited to see that.
So, I know that Kamani had a question. So if you want to unmute yourself and you can ask away, unless it was already mentioned in the chat.
Oh no. Are you guys hearing me properly?
Yes.
Okay. So my question was that I'm currently in sixth form at Camden College. I'm in Dorset, so I haven't done CAPE yet, and I'll be doing CAPE in a few weeks. So I'd like to ask, because Oxford applications they start in October. and I'm usually think that they end sometime early next year. But for the entry requirements for engineering science, which is where I want to go, which is the degree I want to pursue in Oxford, it says I need at least 3 grade ones with 2 units. So it essentially asks for like 6 ones, with 3 of them being subjects for both units 1 and 2. But unfortunately, we only get CAPE results in August, I think. So I'd like to ask, like, would that mean that I would have to apply, well, begin my application like late next year?
I mean, I can answer that because I was in the same position. Kimani, you hear me?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. I mean, I was at sixth form just a few years ago, and I did the same thing because I applied when I was in your position right now. Basically, if you haven't, you're in lower six, so you haven't done CAPE 1 yet. CAPE 1 is the most important part of your application because that is going to be what you'll do is that you will start writing your personal statement and everything like this summer. You can work on all of that, but until you get the results, it won't really be able to be completed, but you will get the results before October 15 guaranteed. I mean, they'll come in August. So once you get your results and everything, you put the CAPE 1 results in, and then you just put in the application that the CAPE 2 results are pending. So what will happen is they will look at your application and they will give you a conditional offer. And it would be based on your performance in CAPE 2. So what they will usually do is they will say they're extending an offer to you based on your interviews and your grades and your written assessment, conditional on you obtaining these grades in CAPE, sitting of CAPE Unit 2. And I know the results come late, but they don't really care. It doesn't bother them that the CAPE 2 results come in August. They're fine with that because the university doesn't start till October here. So there's no real issue.
Okay, thank you.
So did anybody have any other questions about what we've just spoken about in terms of applications? Okay. Well, I'm going to take that as a no, but I think what will be nice is I don't know if both Tasnim and Jafaz want to speak about one of the things that you found, let's say the most difficult about kind of applying to Cambridge. So what was something that you found to be like a barrier or just a difficulty, and what tips do you have to overcome that?
I'll go first. So for me, the hardest part was actually writing the personal statement, because even though your grades are the most important thing, your personal statement also carries an incredible amount of weight, because everybody applying has the grades. They've met the boundaries and they all have that foot in the door, but your personal statement is the first opportunity for you to set yourself apart. So for me, writing that took a lot of time. Like I started writing it around 6 or 7 months before I actually put in my application, and it took a lot of time for me to refine it. I sent it to so many different people, and I found it really difficult to find a focus at first. But when I went onto the Cambridge website and I found what I wanted to study and I centered that as the focus for my personal statement, I found that it became immensely easier. So I studied HSPS, which is an interdisciplinary subject, and that's a combination of sociology, international relations, politics, and social anthropology. And Cambridge is the only university that offers that very specific degree. So when I centered my application on that and it being unique to Cambridge, I found it was a lot easier to get the ball rolling and to actually start to speak from my own passion. So for me, doing that was the first step. And then when I realized that this is something that I wanted to do long term, the facets of this degree are eventually going to filter into my career, and they actually comprise of what I do now. When I was able to understand that and incorporate what I'm doing in my personal life into my application, it kind of came together in a really nice package. So I would say really just take the time to understand why you want to go to Cambridge or Oxford, why you want to do the specific course that you're applying for, and center it in your current reality. What are you doing now that's going to help you stand out as a student in Cambridge? Why do you want to study this degree? And it's easier said than done, but I think once you put that as your baseline, it becomes immensely easier because, like Jafaz said, it's your passion, you're presenting your passion, and that's all they're really looking for. I would also say really reach out to organizations and people around you, cross-check your personal statement, and just make sure you've gone through a couple of drafts, because it will take a lot of time for it to be where you want it to get to. But I think investing in it is really, really, really important. So I had a lot of help from Target Oxbridge. They're a UK-based organisation, and they help get young British Black students into Oxbridge. And they read over my application so many times. They hosted a lot of events that really allowed me to have something to speak about. And I think that's also another thing, having extracurriculars, having hobbies that tie into your degree, that show that you are kind of committed to this subject outside of academia, like it's your passion. I think just putting that through really, really helped me. And yeah, that I feel like having that is what will set you apart.
Yeah, I think for me the hardest part with the application is that for me, coming from Jamaica, it's a very unique process applying to England. It's a year-long process, and not having that kind of idea at first of how exactly I needed to structure my application process, it was a bit challenging to negotiate all of the different deadlines that they had. So this is actually why this form here is very good, because it will kind of just put these things out very neatly on how to plan your application.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions about applications before we move on? Okay, no problem. So, Sade, if we can go on to the next slide, please. So now we're talking about how does Oxbridge differ to other UK universities? So when it comes to other UK universities across the UK, it's very, very diverse. You have universities that are very new, ones that are very old. You have ones that are in Scotland, Wales, and have their own different bits of like culture and history. But Oxford and Cambridge are also very specific. So we're going to go over that. So some of the key differences that you'll kind of notice are when it comes to history, reputation, the college system, and culture. So we've already touched upon college system. And when it comes to history, I think one of the things to remember is that Oxford and Cambridge are incredibly old. And when I say that, I mean like, next slide, please. So when I say that, I mean that University of Oxford was actually dates back to the 11th century and Cambridge the 13th century. And in terms of where that ranks them, that's like fifth oldest like in the world. Like it's very old. So when you're coming into that as somebody who is applying, as somebody who's trying to get, acclimatized to life at Oxford and Cambridge, it's important to keep having that context of actually you're getting involved in something that is quite literally like hundreds of years old. So, and also to just highlight kind of one or two little differences. So Oxford is older. It's older by I think about 100 years, over 100 years. And kind of the way that the story goes is that there was Oxford, and that was the main university, the only university. And then what happened was that there was a handful of more liberal and rebellious kind of alumni who didn't like the way that Oxford did certain things, didn't like, let's say, some of the formalities or the way in which some things were taught, and felt that there needed to be a bit more liberalism to that. So that's where Cambridge was kind of born. And that's something that you can see today with some of the courses that are available. So my course, for example, was the sociology of marginality and exclusion, which is something that sounds very radical for kind of Oxbridge course. Tasnim's course, like HSPS, again, something that is very interdisciplinary and very radical for the university that is actually within. So those are things to also consider when you're thinking about where to go. Also, when it comes to history, those things also relate to like things that you will get involved in. So for example, the matriculation process, and you'll also notice that there's a lot of long words and words that you've maybe never heard before that you'll start saying all the time when it comes to Oxford and Cambridge, because again, you're getting involved in an institution that is hundreds of years old. But the matriculation process is basically the process of formally becoming a member of the university and college. So actually, formally, you're already a member. You've already done all of the administrative work and you've met the criteria. But it's kind of the process of being welcomed and becoming a member of your specific college. So it's a bit more of a celebration. So there's a formal dinner. You'll kind of meet the master of the college. There's all sorts of little bits and bobs that you'll get involved with. There's also kind of commemorative balls like May balls that every college will have. That is a celebration that is black tie, can be very grand, have performers and Ferris wheels and foods and drinks and all sorts, entertainment. And then boat races through rowing, which some of you may have heard about, the competition between Oxford and Cambridge when it comes to rowing, which is something which again is hundreds of years old and keeps that kind of competition alive between the two institutions. Next slide, please. And then that history kind of informs the culture of Oxford and Cambridge. And so one of the things, especially that I didn't necessarily realize or I took for granted, is that when you go to somewhere like Oxford or Cambridge, they're not, it goes beyond academics and opportunities and networking opportunities. It is also training you to fit into elite spaces or certain spaces where actually, if you were just put into that space, you probably wouldn't know what on earth to do. So doing things like weekly, like formal hall, which is like a formal dinner where you have multiple sets of cutlery, 2 wine glasses, and it's just very formal. You learn how to do small talk with someone that you've never met. You learn how to actually conduct yourself in a very, very formal dinner setting. You also learn things like, you know, respectability when it comes to, okay, someone is doing something in Latin and like how to navigate that and how to conduct yourself. I've already gone over Mabel's, and then also other more traditional things like graduation also looks very different. So graduation is pretty much in its entirety in Latin. It's also in like the Senate Hall, which is somewhere that actually you're not allowed to go into until you graduate. So there's all of these little traditions and cultural things involved with Oxford and Cambridge that is very distinct to the institutions that you wouldn't get anywhere else. Next slide, please. And then the reputation. So it's globally prestigious. It's something where Oxford and Cambridge, it's consistently ranked amongst the top in the world. It's consistently ranked in the top in the UK. You think of Oxford and Cambridge and you know that it's academically rigorous. So in terms of what that looks like for you, that will look like very short terms. So that will look like terms where actually it's an 8-week term, so 2 months, and it's a high workload. It's very competitive. You have multiple deadlines happening simultaneously, but what that does and what that tells the outer world is actually this is somebody who has skills that maybe you wouldn't get at other universities. And what I mean by that is having to really prioritize your deadlines and be highly organized. You're also encouraged to get involved with things beyond academics as well, so you become a more well-rounded person as well. So that leads to more higher employability, more internship opportunities, and you also have access to an amazing alumni network as well. Next slide, please. And then we've already gone over the college system, but again, I just want to really hone in with the college system that it is a very big difference between kind of different between other UK universities and Oxford and Cambridge. So the roles of college, just to kind of make sure that you've really got it. So the role of the college is admissions, also general support, whether it is financial, welfare, academic, all kinds of support. The college will also support you with that. It is also your accommodation provider. So when you're thinking about, oh my goodness, what am I doing in terms of accommodation? Actually, when you're ticking that box to say, oh, open application, you're actually saying you wouldn't mind living anywhere. Or when you're ticking that box to say you're going to Queen's or you're going to St. John's or Trinity Hall, you're actually saying that you're going to be living there as well. So that's another thing to bear in mind. And then different societies that are on offer at the different colleges as well. And next slide, please. And also, I've touched upon like the fact that the colleges have different unique histories and identities, but just to show the juxtaposition between what that looks like, the contrast between them. So Murray Edwards at University of Cambridge and Newnham at University of Cambridge are female-only colleges. So that's one difference, that the majority of colleges are co-ed, both male and female, but actually these two colleges are female only. And the way that that reflects in terms of the colleges is that Murray Edwards has like a museum and art exhibition within it. And it is, I believe, Europe's largest kind of like female art exhibition, which is just within the college, which is wild to think about. St. John's at University of Oxford and then Trinity at University of Cambridge are the richest colleges. So when you think about kind of opportunities to travel, opportunities to get involved in international conferences, bursaries to be able to explore different things, to be able to support you with your research, being at a college like that supports you with those things far more than other colleges or newer colleges can. And a lot of the time, the richer colleges also have are some of the original colleges as well. So you're also being put into a college which has a very long-standing history and identity of way of doing things. There's also colleges like Churchill College at Cambridge, which is more subject specific. So it's not that you're absolutely not going to be able to get in. Let's say if you want to do humanities and you go to like Churchill College, but it's something where there's more support and more opportunities if you are a STEM focused, because this is a STEM focused college. And also when you think about the origin stories of these different colleges, the story goes that Churchill went to MIT in the US and kind of, well, my understanding, it could be a lie, but this is what I've been told whenever I've gone to Churchill, is that Churchill went to MIT in the States and was really inspired and wanted there to be something like that in the UK. And that's how Churchill College was born. And then also colleges which are a bit more like financially accessible. So St. Peter's College was born out of the fact that they wanted to make a college that was a bit more financially accessible. Next slide, please. And then throughout this so far, we've spoken very much about Oxford and Cambridge pretty much as one institution, as Oxbridge, but there are some very key differences. And I just wanted to touch upon that. And this is mostly through my lived experience as somebody who did her undergraduate at Oxford Brookes University. So I lived in Oxford for 5 years total actually, and then also went to Cambridge, so having been able to like understand the cities from both of those perspectives. So in terms of like Oxford, so Oxford is a place to go like if you do want to feel like you're in a city. It's larger, it is more diverse, it more diverse beyond the university as well. There's things to do beyond the university, whereas Cambridge is actually smaller. It's a less diverse city, and that can kind of reflect when it comes to trying to find like Caribbean food, for example, or Caribbean ingredients. Also trying to do something kind of, let's say, things like bowling. It's right on the outskirts of the city centre, so there's a real difference. When it comes to transport, so Oxford has, and I hate to say this as someone who went to Cambridge, but it has far better transport links. So a lot more coaches that go to airports, that go to London regularly, 24-hour coaches that are regular, far more buses that are more regular, more reliable. However, Cambridge is a smaller city, and therefore the actual need for those transport links are less. And in both cities, cycling is a very popular way to get around. In terms of geographical location, so especially if you're an international person, or you're someone who likes to kind of just sometimes get out of the city that you're in or the town that you're in, Oxford is geographically closer to like Bristol and Birmingham, Reading, and is actually more west. So there's also the opportunity, if you're an international person, to like explore the UK beyond like the actual town, well, city that you're in. Whereas Cambridge is kind of on the the east, sorry. So it's something where actually Cambridge is a bit more of a standalone city, and the next closest place is basically London, but it is closer to like Stansted Airport. Both are similar in terms of like their proximity to London. So train, you're looking at like 50 minutes, an hour. If you're looking at coach, the social scene, again, because it's a bigger city, Oxford has a bit more social scene. And I know that there's dedicated spaces for like dancehall music, bashment, like all that sort of stuff. So if that's something where you do know that you want to be able to like let off steam and go to a good party, Oxford has that. And that's, however, at Cambridge, it's something where there's a lot more Black and Caribbean focused society. So it's not just the ACS, you have Black Girl Space, you have the Caribbean Student Association, you have Jambridge, there's all of these other societies, official and unofficial societies, to be able to kind of be social. And then both have a Caribbean community, but that community feels a little bit hidden, and it's something where from experience you'll probably find it in third year, just as you're about to leave, but there is a community there, and I would say it's on a similar level. Next slide, please. So just moving on to kind of like student experience. So again, we have Tazim and Javas to be able to speak about their experiences of kind of, being a student at Cambridge. But first, are there any questions about anything that I've kind of spoken about in that specific section? Nope, that is okay. So I don't know if there's something that either of you are keen to say, or in terms of your student experiences, whether that was a culture shock of fitting in and how you overcame that, or if that was something that, or if there's like a story of something that you were pleasantly surprised to find at Cambridge. So feel free to share.
I think that the most unique aspect of studying at Cambridge and Oxford is the supervision system, because you will be given the opportunity to meet on a weekly basis with an academic in your field of study, and you'll present them typically with an essay, or if you're doing a science subject, worksheet, usually, and it's very different than high school. Being able to meet one-on-one or like two-on-one or three-on-one with an academic and just have a very long discussion that you can pretty much guide for yourself in some ways. You dictate what happens a lot of the times, and it's a huge difference from the kind of education in a classroom where you're just kind of like writing notes. There are lectures, I mean, lectures are a thing here too, but the supervisions are they're the most exciting experience. and it's something that definitely is the most the coolest part of Cambridge and Oxford.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I just want to add, your supervisors will be like world leading theorists. Like, these are the people that write the books that you're studying, that write the books that entire universities across the world are focusing on. So it's a really incredible opportunity to share your ideas and to just learn from them, really. For me, it was also the workload that shocked me. Like, I knew Cambridge was going to be a lot, but I don't think anything can really prepare you for the intense workload. Like, when it's intense, it's really intense. So I did a humanities and social sciences subject, so it's a lot of writing. And I remember, because it's 8-week terms, everything's extremely condensed, and I was averaging around like 4 essays every week and a half, I want to say. So like, you produce a lot of work. Like, I'd have 16 essays due in an 8-week term, so you produce a lot of work, but you also grow really fast with that experience. Like, you learn to manage those deadlines, you learn how to read really quickly, process information really quickly, and present it in a really condensed but rich way. So I feel like, even though it's hard, it's absolutely worth it, and the growing and the development, both personal and academic, that you go through is second to none. Like, it's really incredible opportunity and experience.
Thank you so much for that. Were there any questions on kind of, yeah, the actual student experience before we move on to, I believe the next stage is sponsorships and funding? Okay, no problem. So, Sade, if we can go on to the next slide. So, yeah, I was right. So, scholarships and funding. So, what we're going to do first is we're going to speak on the UK scholarships and funding opportunities first, and then we'll have a short kind of Q&A, or Tassim will share her experiences, and then we'll go on to the Jamaica side of things. So, when it comes to UK scholarships and funding, a lot of you will probably already be familiar with Student Finance England, but there's also, when you do your UCAS application, that's where you'll get automatically put forward to whatever internal scholarships and funds that you are eligible for. So when, UCAS is asking, okay, can they share this? Can they gain information from Student Finance England? Or they're asking you about what your parents did in England, all those sorts of things. It's really important to make sure that you give that information like fully and truthfully, because that will affect kind of the internal scholarships you have access to. So university managed scholarships, you'll automatically get submitted to when you submit your UCAS application. There's also standardized bursaries as well. So when Student Finance England tells Oxford or Cambridge that actually this applicant is coming from a household that earns under a certain threshold, you'll also you'll get automatically enrolled into like a standard Cambridge or Oxford bursary that will give you like an allotted amount of money per semester, which is based on basically your family's income, and a lot of the time that's on a tiered system as well. And then there's college specific scholarships and funds. So that's another reason why the college system also becomes important, because it's something where actually there might be certain scholarships and funds that are only available at specific colleges. So it would be a shame if you're open to any college to kind of miss out on those because maybe you had to put it as your preferred choice or something like that. So be aware of that when you're looking. Next one, please, Sade. And then thinking about external funds. So this is where I definitely encourage you to take a picture. We also do plan at the end of the month to kind of share all this information with you as well. Some of it will also be in the group chat. But here are 4 really good kind of ways to explore external funding opportunities. So Zero gravity. So this combines mentoring, internship support, and a grant of up to £3,000. It is something where you already have to be a member of Zero Gravity, because what they'll do is they'll support you through the application process. And then once you're actually there, that's when you'll, I think you have to be with them for like 6 months or a year, and then that's when you have the opportunity to apply to their like grant scheme. Another thing that's really interesting, even though this is Oxbridge specific, is that Zero Gravity and the Black Heart Fund, well, actually, Zero Gravity, the Black Heart Foundation, and Turn to Us, they all offer scholarships beyond Oxford and Cambridge. So it's something where Zero Gravity, I think, focuses more on Russell Group universities. Black Heart Foundation, they're open to any sort of education. And I'll speak a bit more on the Turn to Us grants a little bit in a moment. So the Black Heart Foundation, so for them, it isn't as clear as you get £3,000, £5,000, £1,000. It's based on your needs. So what you need to show them is that there's a deficit somewhere, that maybe you've already got a scholarship somewhere else, or maybe you've been able to cover the course fees, and there's a deficit where actually you can go, but you won't be able to like afford the accommodation or something like that. And then what you'll do is you'll submit your application. You'll also show that you align with some of the values of the Black Heart Foundation, and then they will grant you any amount based on kind of who's applied to the grant already, what's been allocated, and your need. So from my personal experience, when I applied to this, I applied for my postgrad, but they do obviously already also support undergraduate. It was something where I had a deficit, and off the top of my head, I think they awarded me £5,000, which went a long way in terms of covering like accommodation for the year. So that's something to bear in mind. And interestingly enough, they also cover support for the UK and US study. And it is also something where I checked their eligibility criteria. And for anybody who is a Jamaican national, I do believe that they also support Jamaican nationals, because the eligibility criteria that was on their website didn't say anything specific in terms of you have to be a UK national, but what the only thing that it focused on is that the education that you are pursuing has to be in the UK or the US. So that's something to consider as well. The Stormzy scholarships as well. So basically with them, again, they'll just cover the expenses throughout the 3 years. And then the Turn to Us grant is something that I really want to focus on. And that's something that I really encourage all of you to kind of take a screenshot, look on the website, make a mental note or a literal note, because what this is that this is a grant search engine, and it's very specific to you. So what you'll do is you'll go onto the website, you'll go into the grant search engine, and then you'll type in your postcode. Once you type in your postcode, it will then ask a series of questions. For example, your age. It will also ask you what sort of profession you do, or what area of expertise you're in. It will also ask you if you have any additional needs. So if you have a disability, caring needs, anything like that. It will get a well-rounded picture of you. And then it will give you a list of all of the grants that you are eligible for that's on their database. So these are little ones, like for example, when I was applying, I found one that said, because I'm a vegetarian, I'm eligible for £500 from the Vegan Society. Things like that, which you wouldn't even think of. There's other ones which are local. So because of that search engine, I found a local grant through a church where you didn't necessarily have to be a member of that church. You did have to be like christened or baptized. But that grant allowed me to going through that search engine and then applying to that grant. Then I got access to, at my undergraduate, it was £8,000 to be able to kind of fund my study abroad, and for Cambridge it was no, it was about £2,000 to cover a deficit that I had in terms of like other expenses. So it's definitely worthwhile, and it's something that also isn't specific to education as well. So some of them are specific to kind of you have to be a student or you have to be a recent graduate, or it's specific to like, let's say, school supplies, laptop, that sort of thing. Other ones, it can literally just be like you need the money, and let's say you're neurodiverse and you apply through there. Next slide, please. So for that, now that we've kind of gone over some of the UK experiences, this is just an opportunity for you to ask any questions. And whilst you're thinking of those questions, I'll just allow Tasnim to share her experiences of accessing funding and scholarship. Oh, hold on, I think we have a question. Okay, so the question that I'm seeing in the chat is, I already received an offer from Cambridge to start later this year. I love that for you, by the way. I just applied to student finance last week. When should I expect to hear more about funding, like bursaries, internal funding? And when can I apply for external funding? What are applications like? Any advice? Okay. So, first of all, big up yourself. Love that for you. Congrats. Tasnim, did you have access to any external funding? Because if not, I'm happy to take the question.
Mine was all internal.
Okay, so I think the first part of that question was about when will she hear back about internal funding. So I'll let you kind of speak on that, and then I'll speak on kind of the external part.
Perfect. So congratulations, that's incredible. Internal funding mainly gets sorted out once you've received your A-level results and you've confirmed your place at the University of Cambridge. So it's also dependent on what college you go to, but there are some funding opportunities that are university-wide. So depending on your household income, if you're below a certain level, you will be eligible for the Cambridge bursary, which is, if I can remember, it's around 1.5 every term. And this is just to help with general, maintenance. So it goes straight to your bank account and you can use it where you see fit. Depending on your college, there's also additional help. Some colleges don't offer any help, I will say that. So really research each college and see which one, if you need it, which one is most applicable. I went to St. John's and they were extremely helpful when it came to funding. So I got the St. John's bursary as well, which amounted to around an additional 3.5k a term. So that was on top of the Cambridge bursary. Yeah, John's really loves to give out money. So that was on top of the Cambridge bursary. And then if you're eligible, you can also get a maintenance grant, which is like 2k on top. So I'd say definitely research the college. I'm not too sure which one you applied to, but each differs. But there's definitely the Cambridge bursary, and you'll automatically be enrolled in that if you are applicable. And yeah, for John's, if you need it, if you meet the threshold, then you're automatically enrolled in that. So there's no formal application to go through. They will just tell you that, yeah, you've received the bursary, and they'll give it to you every time.
Thank you so much for that. And also, big up John's. I didn't know that John's was like that, so love that. But I think, speaking on the more external side, and also just to give context, yes, I did go to Cambridge for postgrad. However, I did access external funding for undergrad at my other university. So what I would say is, I think your question was about basically when can you start applying. I would say from when you have an offer, start applying and start doing your research. Some places do have deadlines, and I think the thing is, especially at undergrad, it is something where actually you'll be able, even if, let's say, you missed the deadline for this year, you'll be able to, apply next year. But I would say the Black Heart Foundation, they have kind of 2 enrollments. That's how they do it. So it's almost like you would do one, and then it would be specific you would do, sorry, so let's say you applied now. They have a time where you apply, and then you'll get your response by basically like November sort of time. So you apply kind of in the summer, and then you get your response by like mid first term, like Michaelmas is what they would call it. And then they have another kind of set where you can apply just before Christmas, and then you'll get your response kind of like mid, yeah, you'll get your response like let's say mid Feb sort of time. So I would say the sooner the better. What are applications like? So what I do, and the reason why I really wanted to share the Turn to Us link with yourselves, is just because there's so many grants and funds and support for students that goes unclaimed, undersubscribed. People would know about it. And for Turn to Us, I found so many little ones where it was like 250 here, 250 there. But once you start adding, you know, 250s up, you start getting to like money that feels substantial in terms of being able to get those supplies and cover certain expenses and things like that. But I would say, yeah, apply to them as soon as you can, really. You've got your offer already. If it's something where you feel like student finance would cover the majority of your costs, then there's no harm in waiting until you're physically there. Because one thing that I did know is that when I did do a couple of applications before I went, before like offer day, basically, before I got my unconditionals, it was stuff where like I had to change it, and it became a little bit administratively difficult, because it was like, okay, we can give you, let's say, £1,500 to do a course at University of Leeds doing sociology and social policy. But and then when I didn't get into University of Leeds, it was actually something where then they had to kind of change bits and bobs, and they had to reassess certain things because the information that I gave was specific to University of Leeds and the finances associated with going to university there. So I think it's something that's up to you. But applications are fine. Some are quicker than others. I've done local ones where it is literally one page of A4 and you can do it in 5 minutes. And then Bob's your uncle, because it's undersubscribed, you'll get a check for 250 like in 2 months' time. I've gone through others where the Black Heart Foundation, where because it's considerable amounts of money that can go up to like the multiple thousands, and you're up against people who are trying to go to the US, people who are trying to go to throughout the UK. It's a bit more competitive, but still those applications on, it's like no more than 5 pages. It's not too crazy. So hopefully that answers your question.
I also want to quickly add, now that you've gotten your offer, go onto your college's website and see if they have any internal scholarships. Because I know John's has like opportunities where you apply and then they'll they will cover your entire degree, tuition and maintenance. So like the Qatar funding, I think it was, they offer £85,000 to cover everything. So just go onto the website specific to your college and look at that as well. And also, once you start your degree, there'll be a whole range of bursaries and scholarships for you to apply to. So I applied for a couple of travel scholarships, some specific to John's, some university-wide. And because a lot of people don't really know about it, your chance of success is really, really high. And if you tie it to your degree, if you turn it into a research project, you're more than likely to get it. So I applied for about 6 during my time and I got 4. So it is really accessible, and a lot of them will cover your entire trip. Some will cover your trip partially, but it's an incredible opportunity to see the world, go out there, and to really like just expand on your research. And you can use it for your dish, you can do it for your own personal gain, but you just have to really utilize the university website, your college website, because they all have funding sections that you can look into, and that will specify the deadlines, what you need to include and things like that. So that's my advice.
Okay, were there any other questions in relation to UK funding? Okay, So now moving on, and if we can go on to the next one. Yes, thank you. So now moving on to Jamaica scholarships and funding. So this one is this first internal one is pretty much the same as the UK like internal funding. So if we can move past that, please. So, as Tasnim's mentioned, and as was mentioned previously, there is college-specific scholarships. But what does that mean? So, in this example, and this is something that again was highly it's under it's under applied for. People don't know about it. Like, so it's something where if you do apply and if it is a year where actually, it is open, then there's a high chance. So it's definitely something to look into. But the Lord Northfield Scholarship is specific to Emmanuel College, which is Sade's college, also known as Emma. It's something where you need to apply by the UCAS funding deadline. It is also something where it's open to finish all courses, excluding the ones on the screen, and it is very generous. It is specific to people basically from like it's a very old one, so they refer to it as like the British West Indies, but basically I guess the Caribbean Commonwealth. I don't know how to phrase it. But yeah, so it covers course fees, to return, airfare, like flights to your home country and back, a generous personal allowance, and that is their words, and it is based on academic excellence. The only thing to bear in mind with this one is that it is one student and it covers everything. It covers from start to finish. So it is something where at the moment there is a student from Trinidad who I believe is in their second year out of a 4-year course. So it's something that will be available either next year or the year after next year, and then they'll be looking to kind of cover all of the expenses associated with one other student from the Caribbean to go to Emma College. And you do have to also put it as your preferred college as well. So this is why when it comes to applications, you do have to be very mindful and do quite a bit of research when it comes to colleges to make sure that you're not missing out on little opportunities if you've not got too many preferences, because this can be a make and break for some people, especially international undergraduate students where there's not a lot of funding opportunities anyway. Next slide, please. So when it comes to Jamaica-based scholarships and funding opportunities, so as I mentioned, Black Heart Foundation, it looks like it could be something where you can get support from there. Turn to us again. What you would put is that basically you don't live in the UK, but you would tick all of the other criteria: your age, what sort of subjects you're involved in your sector, if you have any kind of different abilities, either neurodiverse or physical, and then there'll be scholarships and grants and different financial support based on those things, because some of them do have requisites to say actually you need to be a UK national, but some of them don't. So it's definitely still worth having a look. There's also Commonwealth and British Council search engines. Unfortunately, the Commonwealth one, it very much prioritizes postgraduate students. However, I did find a couple from the British Council. So if you can go on to the next slide, please, I will show those. So I did a quick search through the British Council website and I managed to find 2 scholarship opportunities for Oxford. Unfortunately, there were none for Cambridge. And these ones, again, I just found those through the website. So it covers pretty much everything. It covers the course fees, it covers some airfare, it covers some living expenses. And for the Ellison Scholars, it also covers possible future funding for projects. For the Ellison Scholars as well, it's also something that is associated with an organization. So they also offer kind of internships and things like that in the summers that I believe were paid. That's what it looked like by the website, but look into that. And it's non-specific, but the main criteria is that you're basically using technology to to resolve a global issue, whether that might be agriculture and I don't know, obesity, or I don't know, but you're using technology to solve a global issue. And then for the Reach Oxford Scholarship, that one is open to both undergraduate and DPhil students, which is basically doing your doctorate. But this one, the selection criteria is a combination, which can be very good for those who are still getting those, you know, A star, like those A's, but maybe they're not on the A star, sort of side of things. And this one's good because what it also does is it looks into kind of financial hardship, your social commitment. So is it something where you started a society at school, or is it something where you're very involved in volunteering in Jamaica, for example? And then it will take those things into account as well, and it covers more kind of humanities, social sciences, and some sciences as well. Next slide, please. And I am aware of time, and I do believe that Kamani was the only Jamaica national in today's chat. So, first of all, were there any questions about any of that in terms of the Jamaica side? Please put them in the chat. I think for the sake of time, what I'm going to do is, Shafaz, is there anything that you want to share in terms of funding experiences that you feel like would be important for those who will be watching this after the event?
I don't really have much to share on this one. No, sorry.
No problem. So is there anything where, I love the way that Sade just was like, okay, straight to the Q&A. But is there any questions that you had before we say thank you? Miss A Success going once. No problem. I will take that as a no. It is very close to bedtime anyway. Okay, so next slide, Sade. Well, thank you for attending.